Hi, I'm Keith Grossman. I am a mediator. I'm also an attorney and educator at law, and I'm here to talk with you today about 5 essential things you need to know to become a successful mediator. The first one that I'm going to start with is understanding the role of the mediator. So mediation is a consensual process where the parties are selecting a neutral person, the neutral professional, the mediator, to help them to resolve a dispute. And so the mediator's role is to facilitate that discussion and to help them understand their options in order to reach a resolution. The parties, however, are the ones that resolve the dispute. The mediator does not resolve the dispute for them. This is a concept called self-determination, where the parties have ownership over what their result is. That's self-determination, and it is one of the most critical aspects of mediation. And the mediator has to abide by that, has to support that, and promote that with the parties. So I want to go ahead and tell you a story. It's about a trip that I used to make every summer. My daughter went to summer camp up in North Georgia, almost at the border of North Carolina. I live in Fort Myers, Florida, and what would happen is my wife, who's a school teacher, would usually take our daughter up to camp, but when the camp was over and we had to go pick her up, my wife was already back at work as a teacher, so I would do that trip by myself. I had a friend who had a cabin that was in the North Georgia area that they would let me stay at in order to break up the trip since it's too long to do in one day. So in this neighborhood where they had their cabin, there was another home that had a big pond in the front of their house right next to the road. And in the pond were these 2 swans. And they were just beautiful. They would glide effortlessly along the water, and it was really lovely to watch. So I would come home and I'd tell my wife about seeing the swans again. Well, on one occasion, she actually was able to join me on this trip. And so she was looking forward to seeing the swans. We got to the cabin, we put our stuff away, and then we went down to the neighbor's house where this pond is, and there was only 1 swan. So my wife and I are talking, oh my gosh, what happened with the other swan? I hope it's okay. And with that, the owner of the house pulls into the driveway. He gets out of his car, he walks down the driveway to the road where we're at, and we start talking with him. And my wife immediately says to him, I've never been here before, but my husband has always told me about these 2 swans that you have, and I was looking forward to seeing them, but we see that there's only 1. Is the other one okay? He proceeds to tell us a story about what happened, and I learned a few things about swans that I never knew before. One was that when swans are having they're in conflict, when they're having another animal that's preying on them, what the swans do is they take their long necks and they wrap it around the adversary and they pull it under the water to try to drown it. And I found out that they will do the same thing to each other. So what will happen is that they will wrap their necks around each other and they will each try to drown the other swan. So a few weeks before we were at this house, the owner told us that he was in the shower on the 2nd floor of his house, and all of a sudden he hears his wife yelling for him. He quickly turns off the water, he throws on a towel, he goes running downstairs. She's in the laundry room, mud room, and she is covered in mud. She is sopping wet from head to toe, and she's holding one of the swans in her hands. What had happened was she had heard the 2 swans wrapping their necks around each other, trying to drown the other. As soon as she heard the noise, she knew exactly what was going on. She went running outside, she dived into the pond, she got in between the 2 swans and she grabbed the first one that she could get her hands on and she pulled them apart and she brought one inside, because once swans start fighting with each other like that, they will continue to fight. So they could not put the swans back together. So they had to donate this swan to an orchard that's nearby in the area because they couldn't put them together in the pond anymore. So I could tell you this story because it's an analogy for conflict and resolving conflict, but that's not actually why I'm telling you the story. I'm telling you this story because another thing that I learned about swans is even though you look at them and they seem like they're just effortlessly gliding and it's just beautiful, that's what you see on top of the water. Under the water, they are paddling frantically. There's a lot of energy and a lot of commotion going on under the water that we can't see. And that's the work that we have to do as mediators. We have to get under the water, under the surface. When people come to mediation, they're telling us a story that they want to tell us, either intentionally or because they don't think certain things are important. But as mediators, we need to get under the surface, under the water, and understand the things that they're not telling us. So that's the role of the mediator, to ask questions, to listen attentively, to encourage them to give us more information so that we can help them. So that's what we have to do as mediators, is we have to get under the surface. We have to ask questions, we have to listen attentively, and we have to find out what are the things that are important about why they're in this conflict and how we can help them resolve the conflict. So as the mediator, the things that we are going to do are we're going to control the process, we're going to facilitate the discussion, we're going to ask questions to help the parties clarify the challenges that they have and the issues that they're facing. We are going to help them explore their options, brainstorm solutions, and we're going to help them to evaluate the proposals and the options against their interests, to compare them, to show them why certain things would work or maybe not work based on what their goals are, what their motivating factors are. And then ultimately, we're hopefully going to help them resolve the dispute, and then they are going to be able to put together a final agreement that we will help them finalize and put into writing. Our tasks as a mediator are to remain professional, have a professional demeanor, and maintain control of the mediation session. We're also going to help structure the discussion and point out and promote when they are making small agreements, when we're moving closer together and there's progress, and we're going to build on those agreements. We're going to help them understand how to build on those agreements so they keep getting closer and closer, and we're closing that gap between their differences. As a mediator also, we're going to start off with a strong opening statement. The opening statement is to set a positive tone for the mediation, to explain our role as the mediator and how we're going to be able to assist them, to encourage them to be honest with what they're thinking, what they're feeling, so that we can assist them. We want to, from the opening statement, talk about things that are building a connection with them, making them understand that they can trust us, that they can have faith in us and confidence in us, in our ability to be able to assist them. And we, of course, want to emphasize the importance of self-determination, that this is their case to resolve. They have ownership over what that looks like. And specifically for mediation, we need to emphasize the confidentiality, that the things that we talk about in mediation are just between those of us who are participating in the mediation session. So there's no concern about things being talked about or used against them at a future time, a future court hearing, or anything like that. So a best practice for us is to be a calming influence on them and encouraging them to continue moving forward. Mediation is not easy work, and we have to overcome obstacles, so we have to promote that positive tone and encourage them to be persistent and work through any of those complications. So now you know the role of the mediator. Let's talk about the skills of the mediator. The essential skills that every mediator needs is what I want to talk about with you right now. And a key point is that to be a successful mediator, you do need to develop a strong set of skills. Some of these skills come naturally to us, who we are as individuals, and others we have to just really figure out how to maybe create from scratch. Even the ones that we're strong at, we're going to need to build on. This is not something that happens overnight, and it doesn't happen with the first training that you do as a mediator. It comes over time with experience and understanding things that went right and things that went wrong in mediation sessions where you are mediating. The types of core skills that I'm talking about are normally identified as things like strong communication skills, which includes active listening, strong questioning skills. I'm also talking about things like avoiding assumptions, being neutral, being fair, and having empathy for the clients, being creative in order to help them think about solutions, and problem solving, and general negotiation skills. So these are the typical types of skills that people think about when they think about skill sets for mediators. So what I want you to do is to think about and ask yourself, who are some of the most successful conflict resolvers that you know? And what are the things that they do that makes them so good at resolving conflicts? And then I want you to flip that and think about who are some of the worst conflict resolvers that you know, and what are the things that they do that make the dispute or the conflict be more problematic, make it worse, and what are those things that they're doing that are just wrong. And I want you to think about those things in terms of thinking about skill sets for mediators. I've created a concept that flips the idea of a war chest. And a war chest is this idea that comes out of basically medieval times, where kings would put together the resources, usually we're talking about money and jewels, to be able to fund the fighting of a war. So they would have a war chest so that they would be able to have the resources necessary to fight the war. So I flipped the concept of the war chest to think about, what do you need for a peace chest? What are the skills and resources that you would need to be able to resolve a conflict? So instead of going to war, to achieve peace. There are 3 principles and 5 skills that I have come up with that I think make up a peace builder's peace chest. And when I say peace builder, I'm talking about a mediator as well as other types of peace builders. But 3 principles and 5 skills that make up the peace chest. So first, the 3 principles, which are understanding the other person's point of view, helping with the mediation clients to honestly express their emotions, and solution thinking, looking for solutions. People come to a conflict and to a mediation usually talking about their victimization. There's a lot of victimology that they want to talk about, a lot of finger pointing, but we want to talk about solutions. So those are 3 principles that underlie the peace chest. Then the 5 skills that I've identified that a peace builder or a mediator would need for their peace chest to help resolve a conflict are things like facilitative skills, curiosity, asking questions and really wanting to understand the answers, active listening, persuasive techniques, and creative thinking. Creative thinking is important, and a lot of people don't necessarily think about that because creative thinking leads to solutions. Narrow thinking is what prevents people from getting to solutions. So we want them to broaden their thinking, which means that they need to be creative about it, because the things that they've thought about so far have not been helpful for them to be able to resolve the conflict. So we're asking them to go outside of their comfort zone, to go outside of things that they could think of on their own. If they were able to do that by themselves, they would not need the mediator. So we need to be creative for them so they can then be creative and understand why this might benefit them. By relying upon these principles and these skills, mediators use techniques like clarifying issues and understanding proposals so that the parties are clear on really what they're in dispute about and what options are being proposed by both sides in order to be able to resolve the conflict. We're also talking about exploring their settlement options by asking open-ended questions, by having them talk about how these proposals meet their goals that they're looking for, what I call their wants, needs, and interests. And so asking open-ended questions to get answers to that. And then also reframing statements. There's a lot of negativity and toxicity a lot of times in statements that mediation clients say. So as the mediator, we need to be able to reframe those so that we can either state it back to the person who made the statement in a way that takes out that toxicity and negativity, or so that we can bring it to the other side without that toxicity and negativity that's going to press those buttons, make them upset, make them angry. This is a way to help them shift their perspective, see something from a new way, to help them clarify and understand each other's wants, needs, and interests. So these are types of techniques that we rely upon as mediators. So the skill set is a very important piece of the mediator's role, or the ability to be a mediator. And next we're going to talk about the importance of being neutral, the neutrality of the mediator. So now I'm going to talk about the power of neutrality and the importance of the mediator being neutral. This is also a concept that is called being impartial. So it's important for the mediator to be that neutral professional, to be impartial. While facilitating the mediation process, the facilitator really needs to model these different types of skills that I've been talking about. And more importantly, at the very beginning, the mediator really needs to set the tone as being a neutral professional, not advocating for one side, not being in favor of one side over the other. And the mediator needs to model that neutrality and to show the value of being neutral, which also means that the parties, by following the model of the mediator, can be looking at things a little bit more neutral, a little more distant, rather than being wrapped up in their own emotions. So that's one of the reasons why modeling the neutrality is important for the mediator to demonstrate to the clients. Neutrality builds fairness and trust. So fairness in the system, viewing the mediator as being fair, and building that trust so that the mediation clients know that they can work with this mediator. The mediator is really trying to help them. The mediator is looking out for their interests. It also fosters open communication. It helps to encourage the honest dialogue that is needed in mediation, and it empowers the parties to help them find solutions that they will find acceptable in order to resolve their conflict. One of the great things about mediation and the neutrality of the mediator is that it helps create a safe space for all of this to occur, for the parties to feel heard, for them to be able to openly discuss and honestly discuss the things that are bothering them, the things that they want to see happen. If the mediator cannot remain neutral, then the mediator must withdraw from mediating the case. That's how important it is for the mediator to be neutral. So what does neutrality mean? Here are some examples. The mediator should not show any favoritism or bias towards any of the parties. The mediator should be guiding them without really solving it for them. The discussion is about solutions, but it's not the mediator's role to solve it for them, and certainly not by guiding them in a way that is more for one party, advocating more for one party. The mediator needs to be impartial and neutral, as I discussed, while guiding them and helping them to discuss solutions that might be available to them. The mediator should not be offering personal opinions. The mediator does not give legal advice. So those types of things the mediator needs to stay away from. And the mediator needs to remain curious. The mediator wants to understand, not work off of assumptions or by the mediator making judgments about the parties or their positions or their wants, needs, and interests. So the mediator needs to avoid assumptions and avoid making judgments. There is a question as far as whether neutrality is actually an achievable goal. It is difficult for any of us, we're all human, to completely stay away from our biases and maybe some of our assumptions and those sort of things. So it is questioned whether neutrality is an achievable goal. But it is achievable in the sense that the mediator can come to the table, recognize that they have certain biases, and they need to be able to manage those biases, manage those assumptions. If the mediator can do that, then that would be successful for the mediation. If the mediator is not able to do that, if they can't move away from their biases, can't move away from their assumptions, then the mediator should not be working as the mediator on this particular case. So it may not be 100% achievable, but as long as it's manageable for the mediator to take care of their biases, then that's okay. There's an article that's titled "What Our Inner Conflict Tells Us About How We Mediated." And in that article, the authors say, perhaps to some relief for mediation practitioners, the self is not to be left outside the mediation door. On the contrary, it is invited in. Mediators are encouraged to bring their whole selves to the mediation table while assisting in the repair of social systems. So there's not an expectation that they will be completely unbiased and they have to leave who they are outside the room. They can bring it in as long as they can manage it and work within the system in a way that is effective and unbiased for the benefit of the clients. That provides an integrity for the mediation process. So neutrality helps keep the mediator ethical. And so now I'm going to talk about more of the ethical and legal considerations in the process. So I want to talk about ethical considerations for mediators. And there's some legal considerations as well. Ethical considerations are really important for mediators because it provides a framework that guides mediators in how they should be providing mediation services. But maybe even more importantly, it provides a building of trust in the general public and the clients who come into mediation that the mediator that they're working with is going to be professional, ethical, fair, all of those important things that underlie the reasons why we would have ethical rules and ethical guidelines. The public's understanding and satisfaction can only be achieved if mediators adhere to ethical standards. In fact, the ethical rules for mediators in Florida say that it is more important for the mediator to act in accordance with the ethical guidelines than it is to resolve the dispute between the clients. That is how important being ethical as a mediator is under ethical principles. Ethical considerations also include that the mediator should have good moral character. That means that the mediation client should have confidence that the mediator that they're working with is not exhibiting criminal behavior, is not violating rules, not doing similar things to that would be problematic and would destroy confidence and trust in both the mediator and the mediation process. This is important to protect the client's interest and to also safeguard the justice system and the role of mediation in the justice system. Ethical rules for mediators are established to ensure that the mediator maintains an appropriate demeanor, the mediator is neutral, the mediator is not unduly influencing or coercing the parties to do something that they don't want to do, the mediator is not deciding the outcome of the dispute, the mediator is avoiding conflicts of interest, and the mediator is supporting the values of self-determination and confidentiality. Ethical standards also guide the mediators in how they should conduct their business, their mediation business, and how they should provide their services to the public. It also underpins how they should advertise their services to the public. If you are working as a mediator, you should know the laws of mediation in your jurisdiction as well as the ethical rules in your jurisdiction for mediators. Breaching ethical standards can certainly be a way to destroy a mediation, destroy the trust that the mediation clients have in you, and destroy your reputation as a mediator in general. Breaching ethical standards can also lead to sanctions for a mediator. So now, let's talk about how to grow your skills as a mediator. So growing your skills as a mediator is very important. As I mentioned earlier, you're not going to become a great mediator overnight. You're not going to become a great mediator just by doing introductory training to how to be a mediator. You need to be thinking about how to grow your skills over time and what are the different methods that you're going to use to be able to do that. As with most things, being a mediator is a journey. It is not a destination. Growth does not happen by chance. Rather, it happens by purposeful and intentional behavior. Thomas Edison said, "Vision without execution is hallucination." Leonardo da Vinci said, "People of accomplishment rarely sat back and let things happen to them. They went out and happened to things." So I want you to think about your strategy, how you are going to improve your skills as a mediator. Here are some ideas. Think about the type of mediation practice that attracts you, the areas of law, the types of conflict that interest you, and see if there's a good fit for you for those types of cases. Also meet with some practicing mediators to understand how they built a successful mediation practice. What were the things that they focused in on in developing their business, in attracting clients, and how did they develop their skills? What are the types of things that they did in order to grow in that way as a mediator? Also ask them about the mediation culture in your particular jurisdiction. How did they network? And how did they get their first clients? By meeting with some mediators and having these discussions, you might even find a mentor or two moving forward. Be a continuous learner. Attend workshops and seminars and conferences. Absorb all of the information that you can get by going to these conferences and learning new things, learning new techniques, learning about updates in the law, learning about the psychology of people and how that plays out in a mediation session. From these experts, you will learn new techniques and new ideas. Also read books about the mediation process and mediation skills and techniques. By doing these things, by being a continuous learner, you will just continue to build your credibility as a mediator, which leads to more effective mediations, more mediation clients, and that's the goal. Join professional networking groups, professional organizations for mediators so that you're able to network with them and learn from them. Be willing to embrace flexibility. As a mediator, we have an idea of how maybe the mediation should go, but we have to be flexible based on what is being presented to us in the mediation. How are we going to pivot and change in order to respond effectively to whatever is being presented to us, the way the people are acting, the reason for the conflict, maybe proposals that are being shared that we didn't expect. So being flexible is very important in the work as a mediator when faced with those types of situations. Mediation can be more of an art than a science, and so you have to be able to adapt your approach based on what you are dealing with. Now, after you have had some time doing some mediations and you're getting comfortable in your chosen area of where you want to work as a mediator, think about observing other types of mediations, other mediators, in order to expand your understanding and even to expand your interest, because maybe there's some opportunities to grow your mediation practice into those areas of law. So think about going and learning about other types of mediation that are outside of your area of experience in order to learn more, in order to maybe grow your practice. Consider engaging in reflective practice. And what I mean by that is an organized method or process of learning from things that you actually experienced in a mediation. So it's giving a reflective look at what occurred and what worked effectively, what did not work effectively, and how you might modify the way you would handle something in the future based on what happened in the past. And this is a reflective practice is a method that is done in a group setting, and there are certain guidelines for how this type of discussion would go for you to be able to benefit from looking back at an actual mediation. This process of feedback allows you to modify your techniques, improve your skills, think about something a different way. So when you are faced with a similar type of situation in the future, you have put thought into how can I do this better next time. Success is where preparation and opportunity meet. So there are plenty of opportunities out there to mediate. You need to be prepared in order to be able to meet those opportunities when they present themselves. So I thank you for your time listening to me about these 5 ways to become an effective mediator. To review, we're talking about understanding what the role is of the mediator, having the essential skills that every mediator should have, understanding the power and the purpose of neutrality, keeping in mind legal and ethical considerations as a mediator, and understanding how can you grow personally as a mediator to improve your skills, to improve your techniques, and to grow your practice. I look forward to hearing from you. I hope you found this informative. Again, I am Keith Grossman. I'm a mediator, I'm an attorney, and I'm an educator at law.